When you put it into the compost, you're like, yeah, there it goes. Like, you know, for me, I'm partial to a banana peel because I am a banana peel. You know what I mean?
Yes, orange peel, grapefruit, coffee. Yes, coffee grounds. After you put them all over your body as an exfoliator. Eggshells. Strawberry tops. Oh wow, we have a lot of stuff.
Okay, so eggshells, strawberry tops, banana peels, orange peels, apple cores, and what else? What was there? Grapefruit. Okay. All right. Let's express a great truth. Let's get composting. I put in my grapefruit. I put in my banana peel, but some get more feels from the moment when they get in to put their orange peels.
Oh yeah, when I compost, you know I feel well. I got crayons and eggshells. I got Granny Smith apples. They came swell. They're so yummy, yes I know, and they go there.
Yeah, they go there. About to tell the rhyme I tell. Understand, I'm feeling confident. I'm not walking on eggshells. It's like that, and that's the way that we do it. Nate and Hilla, yo, we really like to keep it fruity.
Yes, that's right, I feel whole. I'm hanging out with banana peel and apple core. That's Nate and Hilla, yeah, and we are keeping score. Every time we compost, the earth is like, give me a little more.
Let me have a little more. Give me more of that soul verse. I'm coming off of the top like the sun at the solar works. Yeah, exactly, and that's the way that we do it. It's compost day. Let's make some compost music.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, we like to talk the talk. Where we're picking up the trash, yeah, you know we walk the walk. Shout out to the trash walker, here we got a stock. All the stocks, yeah, well we keeping it, we rock.
We're keeping it, we rock. That's the way that we rock this. This is an unorthodox way to start a compost conference. That's okay because we be bringing the truth. Off of the top, rocking just a couple of your favorite fruits.
Yeah. When you love the earth, you're a real hero. Drinking out of a cup, that's cup zero. Hey, we don't throw it into the trash. We're loving the earth, we are not earth's rash.
Not earth's rash. Off the top, spit the raw word. Shout out to Anna cause she's the trash walker. Shout out to y'all because that's the way we do it. Off at the top, coming up with some of that fruity wit.
Yeah, picking up trash, yo, that makes me feel whole. I'm chilling in Bushwick, hanging with Nicole. Clean Bushwick Initiative, that's how we keep it rolling. Everybody know, yeah, the earth is full of soul, kid.
Full of soul, kid. We're heroes. Also gotta give a shout out to Cup Zero. And that's what we're saying in the moment of creation. Understand the food waste gets sacred.
Yeah, you know that we never wanna stop. Hanging out, doing our zero waste workshop. Loving the earth cause it's all we got. And Nate and Hilla compost at BK Rot.
At BK Rot, yeah, you know what I mean. We be mixing it all up, the browns and the greens. Understand that's how we do it. We got the funky sound, the browns and the greens and the greens and the browns.
And browns and greens, browns and greens, browns and greens. Y'all know what I mean, hey.
Browns and greens, browns and greens, browns and greens.
Y'all know what I mean.
Browns and greens, yo, we're kicking it truer. I kinda wish that I hadn't missed out on the tour, but that's okay, because I'm here on the roof. Yo, browns and greens, you gotta mix it up, it's truth.
Yeah, browns and greens come together in the perfect mix. When we put them together, you can really fix up a compost pile that is so quick. Thermophilic action, it's so hot and it's nice and thick.
It's nice and quick, yeah, I really do enjoy it. It's brown like the color of what I put in the toilet. It's green like the color of what grows from the grass, but this is fake grass. It doesn't come out of an ass. It's browns and greens, browns and greens, browns and greens. Y'all know what I mean, hey, browns and greens, browns and greens, browns and greens. Y'all know what I mean. Yo, put your hands together for yourselves, everybody.
Saying that the browns are like what you put in the
No, it's actually the reverse.
But it's actually, those are greens.
Yeah, those are the greens.
They just happen to be the color brown.
Well, you're making assumptions about what my poop looks like, but that's a different conversation.
Okay.
So it's really nice to be hanging out with y'all. I think the reason that we're here is because we are also people who celebrate what you can do with your food waste. You can transform it into energy. And so last little while we've been rocking this song about compost, and it's called Compost, and we'd like to perform it for you.
Yeah, this is our compost song. When I saw this event was happening, I was like, hey, do you want us to perform our compost song at this event? And then now we're here, so shout out to y'all, shout out to Brooklyn Solar Power. In order to do this song, we need to invite a very, very special guest, a New York native, compost master, awesome, beautiful person. Please put your hands together for Dior Noel Greenfield. Dior, do you want to tell them about you and what you do?
Talk to the people.
Sure. Hey, y'all. Some of us are familiar. I'm about to say, can I get a real hey? All right, That feels good. My name is Dior, and I'm the founder of Green Food Organics, and we are essentially a worker-owned cooperative. And what we do is we help Bronx residents to rethink trash. So we essentially just collect and process organic waste locally into compost, and renewable energy is something that we're playing around with this summer. And as you know, we use hip hop in order to teach sustainability education. So feel free to follow us at Greenfield. I don't have one I'm out enjoying the weather today, so I don't look like I have one. I'm not branding myself, but it's very easy to spell. But that's what it is that I do. That's what I am.
That's the green thing. All right, let's do this.
All right, yes, ma'am.
Not it.
So this is dedicated to any of you who compost, which is probably a lot of you, and it's dedicated especially to the people in the city that make local community composting happen. Any dedications you got?
Yeah, I do. The music video for this song documents over 13 different community composting sites all over the city from all 5 boroughs, so definitely check it out, and it's dedicated to them. A love letter to the New York City compost community.
Also, if you were wondering what portion of today's proceedings were appropriate to dance during, it would probably be this, because after this is going to be a panel, so if you want to get up and dance, you can. Compost, don't throw away that food waste, make it compost. What to do with that apple core? Be compost. Eat it and just put it where it all goes. Back to earth and nutrient-rich compost. Don't throw away that food waste, make it compost. What to do with that apple core? Be compost. Eat it and just put it where it all goes. Compost. What you gonna do with that banana peel? You had a meal and now you have a slimy peel. You have to deal, don't put it in the trash bin like other packages, cause once it's in the trash and in the landfill, what happens then?
In the landfill, it doesn't get oxygen, cause non-organic trash is piled on top of it. So as it decomposes, it releases methane, a gas that's bad for noses and increases climate change.
But what if you could rearrange the molecules of matter that are left inside your apple cores and peels of your bananas, and put them into something you could use again and scatter into soil for the plants so that their fruit gets even fatter?
Hey, if you mix your rotting food with dried up woods and leaves, it gives worms and microbes a tasty thing to eat. And when they eat it, they digest it, and it all goes back into the soil, and we call that soil compost. Compost. Don't throw away that food waste, make it compost. What to do with that apple core? Be compost. Eat it and just put it where it all goes. Compost.
Hey, don't get worried. Just get wormy. The pieces that you wouldn't eat, the worms eat in a hurry. Give the worms a home, poke tiny holes inside a bucket, but not too big of holes, so it won't let the bugs in.
Or if you have a backyard, it isn't that hard to put your scraps in piles up in layers like a stack of cards. And if you have no backyard or live in an apartment, you can save it in your freezer, then donate it to a garden.
Your food waste isn't waste, it actually makes wealth, cause everything is made from what was left from something else.
The health of all depends on how a small thing decomposes. Don't throw it all away, let it live again, compost it.
Consistently talk about cycles, microbial life will leave us with a brighter future. The age is to the kids. I'm talking about macro and micro organism speed on the browns and green. Another way to say that it's carbon and nitrogen, or maybe even dead. Try to wear alive, but to get this black old distro ratios to be divine. From metaphilic to thermophilic, fooling in a cure step. It takes 4 stages to get compost just perfect. As we watch the heat and temperature rise, we know our pile is working. The bugs, bacteria, and fungi work together, that's for certain. Compost means community, so move is one unit. We all have a part to play, interdependence is the movement, and we move it cause we don't want no sticky smell. Anaerobic conditions prevent us from composting well. One thing I'll leave you with so that you know that you can do it too. First step is not to trash, but separate your scraps, they food.
Compost.
Don't throw away that food waste, make it compost. What to do with that apple core? Be compost. Even if you put it where it all goes, back to earth and nutrients rich compost. Don't throw away that food waste, make it compost. What to do with that apple core? Be compost. Even if you put it where it all goes. Compost. Save your scraps, save your scraps. Don't put it in the trash. Save your scraps, save your scraps. To the earth they go right back. Save your scraps, and put them in a pile. If that's a no-go, then go to a food scrap drop off site and smile. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renee and Hilla. Please keep in touch. touch with us. We're going to be making eco-entertainment for y'all. If you want to donate to us, that's our Venmo. We're going to be splitting it 3 ways tonight. And also, we love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And now without further ado, Nicole, put your hands together.
Wow, I don't know how I'm going to follow that act, but try. Well, thank you, Nate and Hilla, for being here tonight. Let's give them another round of applause. A huge thank you to Brooklyn Solar Works for having us. Thank you, audience, for coming out tonight. We're so excited. You're at Zero Waste NYC Workshop in partnership with Sanitation Foundation. We are absolutely thrilled to be back here in person for our first workshop in obviously about 1.5 years. Really exciting stuff. So I just want to say a quick happy Pride Month, happy Food Waste Fair Week, happy Welcome Back NYC. Can we get a big round of applause for NYC? So in case you haven't noticed, tonight's event is about compost. So we're talking about creative ways to compost. We have a great panel lined up. Thank you everybody for being so patient for the panel portion. But first, I actually want to hand it over to TR, who's the founder, one of the co-founders of Brooklyn Solar Works. I know a lot of you went on a tour, but just to give you a little bit of background about the awesome stuff that they're doing and the space that you're in right now.
Awesome. I did not bring my watermelon costume. And I'm kicking myself for not doing that. I can't believe I didn't bring. Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. This is awesome. So TR Ludwig, CEO, co-founder of Brooklyn Solar Works. This is the second event we've had in 24 hours, so forgive me if fade off here. But now we did a fundraiser for Catherine Garcia last night. She was almost tripped right on that event. Would have been weird. But anyway, thanks so much for coming. We are about 6 years old here. We just crossed our 1,000th solar system deployed in New York City, so that's a big number for us here. We've harkened ourselves into kind of a local solar company. We focus on flat roof buildings, mostly brownstone row house types, co-ops, condos, anything that's got a flat roof. We generally try and address it. One of our pride and joys is our solar canopy. This is a structure we've designed, patented, and engineered, and now sell around the country. So the inspiration was New York City. It's a Brooklyn-based product, and we're trying to sling it really anywhere we can. But it is it's kind of the foundation of how we started the company. Generally, we do small buildings, and that's 1,000 of them now, which we're very proud of. So anyway, thanks so much for coming. It's a really cool topic. We're all into it. We're looking forward to getting some complimentary compost, as I'm sure everyone is. But thanks so much. I gave a tour earlier. If you guys have any questions about how solar works and all that stuff, happy to answer.
So yeah, welcome again, everybody. A little bit about me. My name's Nicole Grossberg. I'm the founder of Zero Waste NYC Workshop. I'm a New York native, born and raised. I actually am a former account manager from advertising turned sustainability kind of nerd, if you will. Now freelance in the sustainability space and work with several different clients and obviously run this workshop series. So we're here to help individuals in New York and around the New York area and hopefully one day the world to lower their impact on the planet. So thanks again for being here. And this is in partnership with Sanitation Foundation, which is the official nonprofit of the Department of Sanitation here in New York. So I just want to let my partner, Julie Raskin, come up here and give a little brief intro. All right, cool. Well, yeah, Julie's actually on our panel tonight as well. So you'll hear more from her then. So we have an awesome panel tonight, and I just want to bear with me as I make a few announcements, but we have Anna Sachs here, who is a waste reduction and diversion expert on behalf of Save Our Compost Coalition, so thank you, Anna. We have Vandra Thorburn, who's here on behalf of Okashi. We have Bob Garnacia, who's here on behalf of Royal Waste Services, so kind of hitting all the points of compost here. And then we have Julie, of course, on behalf of the New York City Compost Project. And then I just want to thank a couple of our sponsors and partners for tonight. So first and foremost, Bob and Vandra, thank you both for being on the panel and also sponsoring this event. So without them, we couldn't make this happen. I also want to thank another sponsor of ours, Con Edison. They've been, anybody that's been hearing our workshops go on virtually throughout the pandemic, they've sponsored us since December of last year, so the past 8-9 months now, and they're doing amazing, incredible work in the renewable energy field. Just some examples of their vision and their transition to renewable energy is tripling energy efficiency by 2030, providing easier access to programs for customers who want to reduce their fossil fuels, 100% clean electricity by 2040. So definitely read up about them on their website. They're doing a lot of amazing things. So thank you, Con Ed, for your generous support throughout this whole pandemic. We couldn't have done anything without you guys as well. So we really appreciate everybody's support throughout the past year and a half. And then just to thank a few partners. So the delicious food spread that you've been eating throughout the event and mingling tonight is from Farm to People. So they're an online grocery delivery service. They source seasonal, small-scale farms, all local to New York, within the New York City area. I'm actually a customer of theirs. I've been getting them for, I think, almost 2 years now, and I absolutely love it. So just some quick facts about them is they source locally, they prioritize local and regenerative agriculture practices, which is hugely important. They use minimal packaging, and they've actually done a lot of work to reduce their packaging lately. They have ice packs that contain plant food, which we actually use in our garden, myself back at home, which is really cool. So they've been doing a lot of work, and their food is delicious. So you're actually, if you are attending tonight, any of you here are eligible for a free farm box. So definitely make sure you see Rachel. Raise your hand, Rachel. If you haven't chatted with her, please do, and you'll get a free farm box for attending tonight. Also, most of the cups that most of you are drinking out of are Cup Zero cups. So Cup Zero is replacing single-use items with a reusable system, which is fantastic. We try and keep our workshops and events as low to zero waste as possible. So you can rest assured that the cup that you're drinking out of tonight is going to be used again and again. So that's great. And then they're also launching an app. So the Cup Zero Go app is coming soon to local coffee shops. You'll be able to use to-go cups in coffee shops all around New York City. So definitely give them a follow on Instagram at Cup0_hero to see more updates around them. And then I also want to thank Gwen Ostenfor for being here on behalf of Common Ground, Compost, and Reclaim Organics in the back over there, Gwen. And then the newly formed Microhaulers and Processors Trade Association. So if you haven't talked to Gwen, she'll be here also for the remainder of the evening. So definitely go over there and chat with her. And then last but not least, we do have our July workshop coming up next month. It is July 11th. It's going to be all around normalizing and destigmatizing secondhand shopping. So we'll be at the Laurelton Farmers Market in Laurelton, Queens, in Southeast Queens. We're really excited about that. It's basically going to be like a giant thrift store shopping experience with local partners and vendors. It'll be within a farmer's market, so you'll be able to shop for local food. Pretty much a little bit of everything. It's on a Sunday. We are trying to do a partnership with the Long Island Railroad right now if anybody has to take public transportation to get a comp ticket. So we're looking into that partnership. But we're super excited for that event as well. So definitely check us out. Give us a follow at Zero Waste NYC Workshop on Instagram. All right, and without further ado, I'd love to get the panelists up here to begin the evening and talk about all things compost. And we'll give Vandra a minute to make her way up.
Hi. While we're waiting on Vandra, since I skirted my introduction earlier, I am Julie Raskin. I'm the executive director of the Sanitation Foundation. We are the host of the New York City Food Waste Fair, which is a series of 24 events happening this week, celebrating all ways to divert your food waste, including composting. There are still probably 7 events left, so I encourage everybody to sign up, foodwastefair.com. And we partner with the Sanitation Foundation to help achieve the city's goal of sending zero waste to landfill. And we do that in a variety of ways, but primarily through partnerships with innovative companies like Brooklyn Solar and Con Ed and Common Ground, but primarily by engaging community members like you to change lifestyle and to come together and put pressure on the systems that we have to really affect change in New York City. So the Food Waste Fair is one of our main events. We also do events around sustainable fashion and recycling and reuse. And we just finished our first Zero Waste Academy, so we are looking to do that. I see some graduates here in the audience and looking to repeat that too. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. So I was just going to ask the panel to introduce themselves, so I guess we can pass the mic down. So Bob, if you'd like to do that.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Bob Guanaccia. I'm from Royal Waste Services, Inc. We're a waste hauler, recycler, composter, construction debris, and really all items of waste hauling. I've been in the business for a little bit over 32 years, and I basically say that your trash is my cash. And I have a grandson today, graduated from preschool, said he wants to be a garbage man when he grows up. So I was very happy.
Hi, my name is Vandra, and I have this little compost collection service called Vokashi. As I like to say, Bokashi is the method, and Vokashi is the service. We've been doing this for, I have to say, a long time. I look over at Dior because it was like, how old is your young daughter now?
She'll be 6.
So that's 6 years ago. Dior and I were at the table saying, what should we do to build out our businesses? So congratulations to Dior on what she's done in the Bronx, actually to Common Ground and Reclaimed Organics and what they're doing in Manhattan. And the particular thing that I'm going to speak out a little bit more about is actually the value of Bokashi. I want us all to love Bokashi.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead the messaging for Save Our Compost Coalition, and I post on social media also as the trash walker about residential and corporate waste. Great, thank you. So this is a question I like to start off every panel with after introductions is if you could wave a magic wand and kind of create a compost system within New York City, I'll just say make it New York City specific, residential and commercial, like what would that look like? What would your dream compost system or food waste system look like? Julie, you want to start?
Yeah, and I'll just say I'm here tonight on behalf of myself as a human and individual, also the Sanitation Foundation, also the Department of Sanitation. So we are the official nonprofit of DSNY, but we were hoping to have someone in this seat tonight who is at DSNY and who manages the New York City Compost Project. And that person was unavailable, but I have worked with her enough that I can basically speak her talking points. So I'll let you know when I'm speaking as which entity, because it's somewhat complicated, although I think we're generally in agreement. And I would say on this question, we're probably very much in agreement that one thing that would really make a big difference in New York City would be to have universal, mandatory composting, both for businesses and residents. So we have it to some degree for businesses. That's thanks to legislation that DSNY put forth starting in 2017, and hence the first Food Waste Fair that followed. And that's increasing, I think by the end of this year, all businesses will be required to compost. Enforcement of that is another question, but for residents, it's voluntary, and I'm excited, and I think everyone at DSNY is excited that the curbside organics program is coming back in October, but it's currently still only funded for half of the neighborhoods in New York City, and still even within that, it's opt-in enrollment and totally voluntary. So.
I think the thing we need to look at in terms of composting is how easy it is to do it. By separating material right at your restaurant, whether it's your hotel restaurant, cafeteria, executive dining room, a supermarket, it's just a matter of taking that material, instead of putting it into a black bag that's basically earmarked for trash, whether it's landfill or whether it's incineration, putting it in a clear or basically another color bag separate from your recycling, separate from your trash, and send that material back to a facility that would clean it, sort it, and then send it up to a farm where eventually that material would be turned into potting soil, come back to your neighborhoods through your Home Depots and your different shopping centers where that material can be used right in your home. Very easy process to do, a little bit of education and training, and we have young kids in some of the schools now, private schools, that are doing an unbelievable job of separating that material back, and they'll be the future of composting programs for years to come.
So Mr. Royal, you're right. It should be a relatively easy collection, and people should be able to separate their food scraps easily. However, we do live in an environment where people are, oh, what can I compost? Oh, I can't put this in. Oh, I can't put that one. Which is the solution number one about bokashi. So if you use bokashi and you can put anything and everything into a bucket, and you ferment all of the food scraps. So gone are the dramas about whether I can put this into my composting or I can't. This, I think, at the residential level is critical. At the corporate level, it's also and I think, in fact, at the corporate level, people are putting everything into organic solutions. But certainly at the residential level, I want to really encourage people to think about bokashi so that you can recycle your entire urban diet. Yay! Yay! Give me your lamb. Give me your fish bones. Give me your old pizza wines. Oh, let's make it all. Give him a little EM wine. That'll be happy.
No, that was great. So for the magic wand, I would make it mandatory, universal. I would bring back enforcement right away. I would make it so that also people are incentivized for reporting in violations, and so that they share in kind of like the reward, whether that's a penalty for businesses or for haulers. That's similar to the 3 minute loitering rule, where once people were incentivized to report, then all of a sudden violations skyrocketed, reporting of violations, and people took it seriously. I would cut back on the trash days, make it so that the recycle days and the organic days were more frequent or as frequent as the trash days. Pilots, so that we can study how every single building with different structures, whether that's the amount of space that's available or the amount of labor that's available, so that they can all participate. Expand the compost project so that every borough has a community compost site, ideally located in the parks. Require the Parks Department to compost. They're not composting right now. And increase the number of the green local jobs so that we can ideally, as much as possible, compost locally and then re-fertilize our soil using locally generated compost, and not have to rely on synthetic fertilizer or rely on fertilizer that comes from, or compost that comes from elsewhere.
Thank you all for that.
So the next question is a little bit deeper, I would say, and could be interpreted in multiple different ways. Panelists, don't feel like you all have to answer, but I welcome all of you to put your input here. But how do you feel is the connection between sustainability, food waste, and equity? Like, what do those relationships look like? How are they all linked together? There are a lot of ways in which they're linked. So just in terms of New York City's waste, when we put food waste into a landfill, or we put it in the trash, it goes to a landfill or an incinerator. Those are typically located in Black and brown communities throughout the U.S. And they're also, so they go there, pollute those areas, cause air issues and respiratory issues as a result. So if you go to Newark, New Jersey, they have an extremely high rate of asthma, and incinerators globally have been linked to early birth or birth defects. They've been linked to a bunch of different just negative health issues. So in terms of the US specifically, that's linked to environmental racism, of citing the incinerator, citing the landfills in communities that are low income. Like I said, usually the greatest indicator of where an incinerator is, and I think a landfill also, is not your income, but it's actually your race. So that's one way in which it's linked. And then also in New York City, it's the transfer stations. It's all the entire waste infrastructure, and those are typically, again, located in low-income communities that are primarily Black and brown. So as much as possible, if we could reduce the amount that we're sending to trash, then we're reducing the need to rely on the infrastructure of the transfer stations and of the landfills and incinerators.
Good point, Anna. I think the other thing we need to look at is, in addition to composting and reducing our trash waste, we need to recycle much, much more. Both of those, have a tremendous effect on the environment, and also to have a tremendous effect on jobs and everything for people in the waste hauling industry. We basically look at now, new accounts that we're getting, everybody's looking to compost, everybody's looking to recycle, and everybody looking to reduce their trash down to the zero base where they think they need to be.
Thanks, Anna. I mean, it's a huge issue because not only is it, the way governments have set up areas, and the areas where poor people live, and areas now that where poor people used to be living and now are being marginalized. We need this just a lot. But the way I really like to think about it is just in the lifestyles. Lifestyles, but there are many of us for whom, eating a good meal is something that we pay a lot of attention to. But for many people, you go to Wendy's, you go to McDonald's, and people literally are not thinking about what they're eating. So it's to me, it's a huge education from 10 years old, from 6 years up, to just think about what we're eating, where what we're eating comes from, and how we're going to dispose of it. And then, of course, the whole other things about, how much do we have to buy, the recycling of goods, etc. So that's a little bit more than my bokashi, I'll tell you. But is there another question?
No, that was great. I'd love to dig a little deeper now into everybody's specific initiatives and get some more information on what you all are specifically doing. So actually, Vandra, I'm going to pass it back to you. And I just would love you to just speak a little bit more about Vokashi, how you started the business, what the process has been like, and more specifically, like, how does it work? I could even say, as somebody, I use a compost drop-off site. I haven't composted at home. I found a way to find somebody to drop it off to during the pandemic, whatever it takes, but I have not had the experience to do it. So for people who maybe don't know, that would be great.
Okay, so I started this in 2009, and I was part of a community garden that was the beginning of the drop-offs at Fort Greene Market, and I heard that 500 people were walking their food scraps to Fort Greene Market every Saturday. I said to myself, maybe somebody would like some help. So I thought, well, okay, let me start a little compost collection service. And then I said, oh gosh, I cannot pick up rotting food, so what am I going to do? And that's when I came across Bokashi. And Bokashi has been the lifesaver. It means that you can collect your food scraps over time in one bucket. There are some yuck factors, and some people might not like it all, but basically hundreds of people have now been doing this for years, collecting their food scraps in a bucket, and we come through once a month and we collect, and then we process. The second part of the bokashi that I want to emphasize is the storage. So once you've filled one bucket with your food scraps, you can put it in a closet and leave it there and start another bucket. But in my case, when I was starting this, I could save 10, 20, 100 buckets and then process at one time. So I didn't have to be processing food scraps once I got them. So the storage part of bokashi and the airtight containers. But I want to tell you the third and most precious part of this to me is how we compost. Now if you're in a community garden, you all know about the 3 bins, and you all know about turning a 3 bin and watering. You got to come out and see what we're doing at Marine Park Golf Course and the trench composting that we're doing. Because we're doing some deep pit composting, and we're putting almost 4 tons of food scraps laid up with sawdust and into big pits and letting the worms do the work. This is the most natural process of building dirt and earth. It goes back, you just think about how the trees, the leaves come off, it's in the earth. They don't have to turn it. They're not measuring it. They're not, how hot is this? Just let it decompose. And then it can be 6 or 8 months in a pit. But once the pit is excavated, then we sift it and it goes to the golf course. And the golf course uses it for their divots and their ornamentals. We use Marine Park Golf Course. About 6 years ago, they called me looking for compost. I said I didn't have any, but I'd be glad to make some for them. Very nicely, they said, come on. I started out there with 20 buckets. I'm now processing 400 buckets. They love us, but it is all off radar. This is something nobody wants to sign on and make this an official thing. I want to make it official, but the management at the Marine Park don't. And so I'm going to be respectful of that, actually, until I get enough golfers like Bob here who go golfing out there, and the golfers go out there and they say, Dan, I'm doing my composting out here. And then once the management say, oh, my golfers like it, then they'll say, okay, now we can call the city fathers.
Yeah.
But the point being that there are 7 golf courses on city property. Each of those golf courses can and should have a community composting initiative, and that is part of this whole sustainability. And so in the rush and the need to find spaces within the city to manage our food scraps, I say parks. I know parks are not great at the moment, but we say to parks, and then introduce us to the managers of the golf courses, and the managers, you say, you know what, I think you could, we'll support you if you want to set up this.
So you have a master plan here.
I have a master plan, this master plan, and then I haven't even gotten to my compost pods. We'll talk about pods,
Okay.
Stacey.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But thank you. Very informative. So yeah, perfect, Julie. I wanted to pass it back to you, and if you could just give a brief overview of how DSNY handles compost, and specifically the New York City Compost Project, what role that plays in the larger system. I think there's some public misconception about it, so if you can kind of clear that up.
Yeah, so I'll also answer the preceding question about equity. I think it all sort of ties together. So sanitation department's budget is a little over $1.5 billion, and right now about between 400 and 500 million of that goes to exporting waste, so exporting trash to faraway places, and I think we all could think of a lot of other uses in terms of city services for that 400 something million dollars. Meanwhile, about 25 to 27 million dollars at peak was going toward the compost program. in a variety of ways, and that's divided out in a few ways. That was all slashed completely last spring, and then 3 million or so of that was restored thanks to Anna's work in the coalition, just for some of the drop-off sites and some of the community composting, which I'll get to yet. That was huge. But in terms of what sanitation does or funds, it's sort of three main prongs. One is the brown bin service, so that is actually, having sanitation workers drive truck routes and picking up food waste from people's homes. And at peak, that was operating in about 50% of New York City neighborhoods. And that, like I said, is coming back in October after a long hiatus. The other kind of main way that sanitation supports collecting food waste is through food scrap drop-off sites. So sanitation funds, I think right now about 150 of those sites, getting back up to 200 soon. And those are operated by a variety of partners. So you'll see a lot of them by Grow NYC at farmers markets, some by other nonprofits. Some are actually, were manned by sanitation employees at transit hubs. And then lastly, kind of outreach and education around at-home composting. So the sanitation department was funding the master composter class and certification, some education at the botanic gardens around vermicomposting. And so the Compost project is actually a network of 7 different nonprofits: Big Reuse, Lower East Side Ecology Center, Earth Matter, the New York Botanic Gardens, Queens Botanic Garden, Brooklyn Botanic Garden, Bronx. I think I got them all. And so sanitation actually funds all of those organizations to do a combination of outreach and education, but also processing. So those, you probably are all familiar with the Lower East Side Ecology Center in East River Park. As you're running or walking by it, you actually see them. They have windows. They're actually manually mixing the browns and the greens and the browns, and creating compost. And so a lot of what is collected at those drop-off sites goes there, whereas sanitation also has a site on Staten Island at the former Fresh Kills landfill. That's a much larger scale kind of industrial compost processing facility. It's the vendor is We Care Denali, and that is where a lot of the kind of harder to process items go. So school lunches, when school was a thing that happened, and kids ate, and also compostable products can get broken down there, whereas they really can't at the local sites. So I think that's everything. It's very complicated. There's like hundreds of partners and so many budget lines, and it's a very kind of precarious network. But yeah, like I said, we need universal, fully funded compost.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to actually go back to Anna, and I'd love to talk about, if you could just give a brief, I'm going to combine 2 questions here, talk about the Save Our Compost initiative, and then the announcement to bring back the compost program this October, and kind of like what the concerns have been from the sustainability community. I think probably a lot of people have seen this on social media and just within the public media, and maybe you can just talk about some of those implications and maybe what's being done to address them, or what you'd like to be seen done to address it.
Yeah. So Save Our Compost as a coalition was formed in response to the budget cuts, where we went from having the largest municipal composting program in the United States to none. That was what was proposed, and it is a group of people, organizations that care about composting, are invested in it, and fighting back against it. So we were successful in restoring 2.86, and Julie mentioned it was around 28 million of the pre-pandemic budget. So it was a lifeline, and it would have been 0. So that means that all of the people who work in composting in New York City and were funded by the city would have lost their jobs. That would have meant there would be no composting available. All the food scrap drop-off sites at farmers markets would have been closed. And it was the second most called for called about item or emailed about item after summer youth employment program. So that was pretty incredible. And people, different council members, they said, like, we didn't realize this was a popular program, which is its own issue. But it was, so we were successful in restoring that budget, which again was a lifeline. And then we've had to fight continuously this other battle, which has been really unfortunate, that the parks leadership has viewed community composting in parks land by Big Reuse and Lower East Side Ecology Center and Red Hook Compost as inappropriate use of park land, even though, as Vandra, you mentioned, golf courses are appropriate uses of golf land, even though you have to pay to do that. So there's this weird thing about someone in the parks leadership doesn't like community composting, and so they said it was alienation. Meanwhile, Big Reuse's site under the Queensbridge Park, you have to wear a hat, like a hard hat, in that area, and it's not like that spot of land would be converted into a playground. It would be converted into park's parking lot, even though there's a lot of parking in that area, and they have a parking lot right next to it. So there has been this huge fight about alienation, and we had NRDC, New York Lawyers for Public Interest, all say that it's not a real legal concern, whatever you're citing, and it's only going to be a legal concern if the Parks Department sues these community composters. We had the New York City Bar Association come out in support of community composting and say that break down every single aspect of their legal argument and say that this is not true. So finally, I think it was probably a combined effort of everyone's outcry and the New York City Bar Association letter. This past week, we got some good news that Lower East Side Ecology Center was going to be moved out of the East River Park because of the East Coast Resiliency Project, and they were supposed to come back in good faith. Meanwhile, there was nothing in writing, and meanwhile, the architectural plans had no spot for Lower East Side Ecology Center. So the idea that in good faith they're going to come back when you have architectural plans that just doesn't show Lower East Side Ecology Center, and given this whole kind of environment in the Parks Department under the leadership, we couldn't trust that. And so finally we got it in writing this past week that they're going to be able to come back after East Coast the resiliency program, which is huge. It's really huge. And then finally we got and then we got also another good piece of news this past week that Big Reuse will be given one other year extension. Which is a piece of good news, and it's not enough though, because they're still the Parks Department still wants them to leave, and they don't want it to be. They've made it clear that they're not allowed to go anywhere on Parks land. It has to be on Department of Sanitation land, and meanwhile, there's like very few sites in New York City that makes sense, and so it's been a really frustrating battle because the budget fight was necessary, and that was COVID. New York City's fiscal crisis as a result of COVID, I understand that. This has been a fight that's been for almost a year now. It's been lurking, and we've had to organize around it and do hearings and testimony and activating the community, and that's not how we wanted to spend our time, and that's not how we wanted to spend our energy, and it's been a really frustrating fight with this administration. In terms of the Earth Day announcement, that was a really weird day. Mayor de Blasio announced that composting was coming back basically as it was before, which means not universal and not mandatory, as an opt-in program. And he didn't consult anyone, or he consulted very few people. He blindsided everyone, and it's just not how you get good policy, and that's not how you get the best result for the city. It seemed very ego-driven. The day before, we had a zero waste hearing where we had with the Department of Sanitation, and we were testifying about the need for mandatory universal composting. And then the very next day, he announced that it's going to come back basically exactly as it was. So it was really disappointing that when one person makes a decision without speaking with stakeholders and without hearing all the testimony and all the work that went this past year and for years before, you get a worse product, you get a worse result for the city. And so we are continuing to push back, like that we should have a timeline at the very least for mandatory organics. We don't have that. We should have a timeline for when everyone in the city would be able to get access to organics, to like very convenient food scrap, a way to recycle your food scraps. We don't have that. We still didn't have the assurance at that point of the different community composting sites. So it wasn't honestly really welcome news, because it was a missed opportunity to make a better system, and we're trying to still, people in the coalition are trying to push really, our thesis is mandatory universal. We're really trying to push that still, and saying that like the system before wasn't efficient, it wasn't really working that well, and it's an opportunity to do something different and better. And it's been disappointing with this administration not really sticking to what was, and not wanting to do anything or listen to people.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Anna. That was a really good explanation of what's going on and what the frustrations have been. I do want to come back to you about what people can do to get involved and help, and I know thank you everybody, we are running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to ask a few more questions to the panelists and then open it up to audience questions as we wrap up the evening. But I just wanted to take a few more minutes with the panel, and Bob and Vandra specifically, I wanted to know if both of you have seen any type of trends in terms of organics collection. So I know, Vandra, that is your core business, but Bob, maybe, Royal does a number of different services, so I feel like maybe sustainability has become quite like sexy, if you will, in the past 5-10 years, right? Like sustainability is cool, and it's just become a buzzword, and greenwash, like there's just been a lot that's come to the forefront. So I'm wondering how that impacts each of your businesses, if you feel like you have seen people come together in the community to want to make a difference and to divert their food scraps, and then kind of what COVID has done to detract from that.
I think that's a good point, Julie. We've seen more and more calls today of people looking to divert more material out of their trash black bags into their composting. And I'm talking about both at the residential level, condominium developments, large apartment buildings, Left Rack City, and probably one of the biggest ones, and I guess, Anna, just to let you know, is when you go to the arm of the parks, to the arm that raises all the funding, and in this case we're dealing with CPC, Central Park Conservancy, where they basically told them that the New York Roadrunners, which restored the New York City Marathon for November 7th, 2021, with about 33,000 runners instead of 52,000 runners, they will be composting all their food waste, which is basically all their bananas, apples, and everything that are part of their goodie bags at the end of the race. And they're saying that, yes, this is going to happen, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right on site. Very, very encouraging, something we've been working with parks for years, but as soon as the financial arm, which was Central Park Conservancy, said we want it, and we're going to raise the money to do it, it happened. So I think that's a good point. But we're getting more and more calls every day from restaurants that want to be on their green list and want to, be composting all their food waste. Whether it's an executive dining room, whether it's a cafeteria, whether it's a hotel, a restaurant. Very, very big in the fruit and vegetable departments at the supermarkets, where it's an easy fix. You bring a pail over, a 64-gallon toter, as you put new fruits and vegetables on the stand, and you're cleaning each one of those and taking off the tops of the lettuce and cleaning that material of any items that maybe have been spoiled. All that material is going right into compost. To the point now where we probably do 60% of our pickups at supermarkets are for composting and only 40% for trash, which is a tremendous move in the right direction. And their recycling program, which the biggest part of their recycling program is still their cardboard boxes. So I think things are moving in the right direction. We're very happy with it. We're very happy that we now have 3 trucks on the road for some of our major accounts, a trash truck, which is the smallest volume, recycle truck, and then the largest volume truck is the compost truck, taking all that material and bringing it back to us, where we clean it, remove all the contaminants, and ship that material up to McEnroe Organic Farms or into waste management and the program that they have at Varick to process that material. So very, very encouraging.
Yeah, that's very encouraging.
Very.
On my side, I'm not sure that. I mean, it's sort of picking up a little bit. When the organics program was dropped in March last year, my phone went ringing off the hook. So I actually I benefited from the close down, such that I can't get in a loan, frankly, because my income, I didn't sustain the loss. At any rate, I just want to say that that what I really want to spend a little time talking about the compost pods, which is what I want to do in terms of neighborhood collections, and to do it in areas where there are not a lot of drop-off sites. In South Brooklyn, in Mill Basin, down by Gravesend and Garrettson Beach, all of the areas in South Brooklyn which generally aren't thought about for either the brown bins or for drop-off sites. So I'm trying to encourage us to develop neighborhood pods, and a pod is where you and one other neighbor sign up for our collection, and the idea is to get as many people on a block to sign up as possible. And then, Julie, then we just make this a model so that we can go to sanitation and say, see, we come through once a month. We come through once a month to collect. Shall we just do the math?
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
I agree. So the last thing I want to ask before I open it up to audience questions is if you could all just let the audience know here. I think it's probably safe to say that almost everybody who's here, no judgments if you don't, but most people here do compost in one way or another. Either they do it at home, they have a service that they use, or they go to a local drop-off site. What is a way that people here can get involved with each of your organizations or initiatives, or how can they kind of go beyond themselves and maybe encourage I know it's kind of like a dual question, but how can they go beyond themselves and encourage other people to get involved in composting without feeling like they are preaching or, telling them how to live their life, just maybe words of encouragement? What would your recommendations be for that? So how to get involved with your organization, how to help people, talk to other people about composting.
I think I've already plugged the Sanitation Foundation, but I encourage everyone to check out the rest of the Food Waste Fair events this week. Foodwastefair.com. And then also ongoing, we launched this week a food waste toolkit. So this kind of answers both of your questions, but in the past when we had the fair, we had a giant expo with 1,000 people in a room and a bunch of tables and exhibitors. So in lieu of doing that this year, that was great. One of the downsides is that for months after, we'd get emails in our info inbox asking like, I have a juice company and we want, compostable cups, what do you recommend? Or, I have this restaurant and we want a commercial hauler, who do you recommend? So we compiled all of those resources into a online site that's going to be available for a year. And rather than just sort of make them available, we also have an interactive component to it. So you identify yourself as a business or a resident first, and then you walk through the different steps modeled after the EPA's food waste hierarchy in terms of things you can do to reduce your own footprint. And then there's a variety of resources, both vendors and nonprofits and community groups that can help you. So that's something I would encourage you to consult yourself, but also to really spread the word, and that's sort of an easy, approachable thing. And then I'd say just in terms of personal tips, one is get a dog. Willa is our mascot for the Sanitation Foundation. She eats all the food scraps, so nothing goes to waste. And then my husband, who's also here, I'm not sure if he's out here right now, but he was very resistant to composting until I showed him that we could keep the food scraps in our freezer, so you don't even notice the smell or anything. And now he's not a waste nut or a crunchy granola person. So I think he's good evidence of. For him, he's excited because he doesn't have to take the trash out as much, and the apartment doesn't smell and there's no bugs. And then we take it to the farmers market. We're lucky that we live within walking distance of a drop-off site, but that makes it accessible to non-waste nerds.
Good point, Julie. Coming from an Italian family of many, many years, we have always 2 refrigerators. We have 1 refrigerator in the kitchen, and the second refrigerator is in the basement in the garage for when we make sauce once a year and we freeze everything. So now the freezer is sharing its time with the bin for the compost. And actually coming home from work 5 days a week after 10 hours a day in the office, and when I pull into my driveway and beat my horn and give my wife and kids an opportunity to know that I'm home, they meet me at the door every day with either recycle or compost. I told them I will not take garbage to the pail anymore. It's either compost or recycle. I've done this for 10 hours. Give me a break. But I think the good part to get involved here is you need to get involved through social media and your civic associations on the residential side. Mill Allen Civic Association we work very closely with, as Vandra said. And we also work too with a lot of the business improvement districts and the restaurants within there, where I can go to them and say, listen, we can cut your waste and reduce that material, train your people on how to do it, and turn that material all into good compost that's going to save you money. But more important, it's going to make your restaurant a green restaurant, where people, when they search out a restaurant that is composting, they want to go to that restaurant before they go to a restaurant that's basically not recycling and maybe not even putting everything into the trash and mixing it all together. So we look to work with our sustainability department and we'll speak at those groups anytime, free. And I think I'll use Nate and Ella as the intro next time to the next presentation that they're going to do, because that got everybody off to a rising start. Thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to actually shout out to Save Our Compost and make sure that everybody is on your list. And then we should just really be agitating like crazy to make sure that it's mandatory. Yes. When it's mandatory, things happen. That's when it happens. But then just personally, for my business, if you want to compost at home, or if you're part of a neighborhood, an association, or any other type of neighborhood group, give me a call, because we'd love to come and visit you and see what your neighborhood could do in ways of establishing a pod. I think that's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
For Save Our Compost, we could definitely use some help with the social media, which I lead, or the messaging committee. So if you're interested, you can send us a message on our Instagram. We're having a compost carnival celebration. Everyone's invited. It's on the 27th, the last Sunday in June, in Queensbridge Park. So that will be a celebration, just celebrating the big reuse and Lower East Side Ecology Center wins. And we will need to be doing more work in the future, definitely with the mandatory universal, and there is also work to do on the state level that to clarify that community composting is an appropriate use of parks, and so that way we're safe in the future if the next administration insists, that it's not appropriate. There is definitely more work to do, but in the meantime, we get to celebrate on June 27th.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of resources at our fingertips, especially in New York, and especially now with social media being at the forefront. Save Our Compost is definitely a great place to start. They are giving you the information that you need to get involved, putting your name on a petition, signing things, writing to your local Congress member, council person. It all matters. It all adds up. I mean, they are the perfect example, the coalition, of actually your action coming into an impact and making a difference. So just because you're putting your name on something doesn't mean that it's being lost. It's actually going to make an impact. So that was all very encouraging. Thank you all. And I want to just take a couple minutes to maybe take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. I know you've all been so patient, and thank you for staying a little bit later. So if anybody, yeah.
So if you want to, yeah, grab the mic.
Does it reach? Hi, I am Leah. I am a recent graduate of the Zero Waste Academy, which was amazing. And part of my question is inspired by what I learned from that program, which was one of the 8 or 9 amazing sessions, or I forget how many now there were, but one of them was really focused on how we build and redevelop and redesign buildings in New York City to accommodate for composting and just better management of waste. And then the other part of my question, I guess, stems from my own, well, basically I love the planet, that's why I'm here, and I like to look at things I can't afford on Zillow. And I think it's absurd that fancy buildings in New York City and all 5 boroughs, new buildings like by Toll Brothers and big developers, do not have a place for their residents to compost. And I guess this kind of ties into what Anna was saying as reimagining and kind of re-communicating the idea that actually compost is an amenity and it's amazing and I want it everywhere. So I guess my question really was, what kind of resources you guys have right now that we can share with developers, and then also just advocates to say, we want this, it's an amenity, it's something awesome, we want it in as many places as possible. So
I think a good point there is that we meet with a lot of building developers, architects and everything that are now putting in refrigeration rooms in the basement that used to be maybe a storage room for bicycles that the tenants could rent. Now they're building these rooms where basically you can store your compost, which is a really move to the forefront. We just did it at a building, 214 Riverside Drive, condominium complex, that basically went through probably a $200 million facelift. And part of that facelift, not 200 million, but a small part, was for a refrigeration room at the basement where tenants could bring down. We provided them with 64-gallon compost toters, picking them up once a week. Now it's twice a week, and I think before we know it, it'll be 3 times a week in a room that's refrigerated, where they don't have to worry about rodents and bugs and smell and stuff like that. But I think the ownership of that complex, 214, was very, very forward in knowing that this is what the tenants wanted, and went right to management and said, this is what it's gonna happen. And I think that's a good part,
I would recommend the Zero Waste Design Guidelines, which are a tool developed by Claire Mifflin and others. Claire's an architect, and really with the developers in mind of how can you plan out, when you're thinking about a new building, a new development, how can you plan out the waste storage areas? Because it's very hard to retrofit a building, and it's so much easier to do it from the beginning of the design process. Yeah, Julie, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I think you learned this in the academy a bit, but sanitation did put forth legislation. It was literally like May 12th or whatever, March 12th, right before everything shut down, through City Council, to require that new buildings do build out space for storage of their waste and recyclables. Part of that is part of this Clean Curbs initiative to keep piles of trash bags off of the sidewalk so that we can free up some of that space for walking. But it all ties together. So I think this goes back to everything we've all been saying about how important legislation is and policy, and how much of a difference you can make by writing letters and calling your city council members. Maybe this will edge out, last year it was SYEP and then compost. Maybe this year the hot topic in the inboxes will be zero waste design guidelines in new buildings. But I think you're absolutely right. It's such a huge opportunity. There's so much development happening, and it is an amenity, and it's, we're here tonight making it super cool. So
Yeah, and I think in terms of older even if it's not new development and it's something you want to see in your building, there's plenty of resources from the sanitation. But I also think it just is a matter of speaking up and asking the question and talking to the landlord and just saying this is something that I want, and talking to your fellow residents within the building and getting a petition together even there. If you have 40 residents in a building, then tell them you're interested in composting and see who else is interested in doing it with you. So I think it's also not being afraid to kind of ask the questions that maybe somebody else won't ask.
Manhattan Swab has been resources for that to help us with like buildings. Manhattan Swab.
Solid Waste Advisory Board for every borough has one. So wherever borough you in, you can definitely join the SWAB and attend the meetings. That's a good call. I think we have time for one more question, and then I just want to leave a little bit of time for like goodbyes and networking for the end of the night and talking to the panelists if you wish. So, oh yeah, Michael?
I know we've talked a lot about apple cores and banana peels, but how do we all feel about compostable packaging, bioplastics, businesses that say bought it here, composted here, what actually turns into soil, what gets screened out and does not?
Yes.
And I'd love to hear from all of you.
That was actually a question on our on the list that we didn't get to. I'll just take a quick response to that, and then I want to let you all weigh in. But to me, the only answer is reuse. And people ask me this all the time: what's recyclable? What's compostable? What can I do? What are the alternatives? The alternative is reuse. And I know there's been a lot of fear around reusables because of COVID, but there's been a lot of proof from scientists and medical professionals that it does not live on surfaces. We are now turning the corner of the pandemic. Hopefully it stays that way, but this is the answer to me. This is the answer, and as much as we can implement reusables into our everyday lives and put our support behind the companies and organizations that are bringing this into the forefront, into the mainstream, to me that's gonna, I mean, anybody asks me about compostables, I always just tell them, you don't know, it's a mystery, reusable. So
I think that's a good point. I think the point there, I'll give you an example, is our former mayor, Mike Bloomberg, and Bloomberg LLP has a program in effect where everything is reusable. The first day you report on the job, you get your ID card, they get you into the building, you get your coffee cup with your name on it, and your glass cup for your water and your soda and whatever. And then reusing that, there's no styrofoam, there's no paperware, nothing there that you can get on site. You have to have your own stuff. I think that's an excellent program. Excellent.
Just logistically from residential DSNY collection standpoint, so the when you take your stuff to a food scrap drop-off site, since that material is primarily getting processed locally in those local nonprofits, it can't handle any of those compostable products. At the Fresh Kill site, we can process compostable products. They must be at the very least BPI certified, and then better if they're CMA certified, because that means they've been field tested, which means they've actually been put through a compost experience like the one that we have, and guarantee that they will break down. But you need a lot of machinery and a lot of time and a lot of space to do that. So I echo Nicole's sentiment.
There's only, I think, 2,000 compost facilities in the whole country, right? And only about 400 of them can actually process bioplastics properly. So that just put that in perspective of how it's just not available, the proper resources to break down those materials, unfortunately, as well.
Reuse.
Yeah, and Michael, you know this. It's a red herring. It's very resource intensive to produce. A lot of the life cycle assessment analysis, a meta study done by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, showed that single-use compostable plastics are actually more resource intensive to produce, mainly because they're agricultural product that requires fertilizer, energy, water, land use, all that, more so than other single-use materials. So it's really a false solution, and it contaminates the recyclables. It's a big issue because the machinery can't detect it from other types of, like from actual plastic. It gets screened out at any anaerobic digestion facility. In most of the composting, when you're doing like the debagging, that also typically screens it out. So there are issues throughout the entire, like both in producing it and then at the actual composting stuff, and that any compost produced with it can't be certified organic, and so it cuts off a huge end market for it.
There's actually a great video by Lucy Biggers, who's a journalist, and she covers mostly sustainability content, and her series is called One Small Step. If you Google it and look on YouTube, she actually has an episode about compostable plastics and the myths around it, so it's about 8 or 9 minutes, and she has some solutions and resources as well, so I encourage everybody to check that out. But I think
Let's not forget our sisters in the Ban the Plastics.
yes.
All of our friends in Ban Plastics.
Yes, and Plastic Free July is coming up next month as well, so definitely look out for more of that information. I think social media and Instagram has become such a great tool and resources for people to find out how to get involved and how to actually make a difference. So I want to thank all the panelists for being here tonight. Thank you all so much for your amazing, inspiring words. Thanks to the audience for coming out here and trekking to Brooklyn and coming here in person. And if you've been with us throughout the whole pandemic and watching us on Zoom through a computer screen, we appreciate you and we're happy to see your faces. Thank you to Nate and Hilla for being here. Thank you so much to TR and Brooklyn Solarworks for this beautiful space and this amazing sunset now. To all of our partners, to Reclaimed Organics, to Bob and Vandra for our sponsorship, to Dior, thank you. Sorry, Dior, for your amazing wrapping. That was awesome. Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Thank you, Con Ed, for being here and for supporting us throughout the whole pandemic. Cup Zero, Farm to People. Everybody is amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nicole!
Yeah, I mean, we're wrapping up, but feel free to take a couple minutes to speak to anybody. Everyone will still stick around if you want to sign up for compost services. Please have another drink and nightcap, and thank you for coming.
Return your cup.
Guys.